Well, some of the biggest free agent names in the NFL are flying off the board, and they're going everywhere but here. However, don't lose faith, Saints fans, since the team signed Willie Gay earlier this week, Cedrick Wilson, and Nathan Peterman, yes, Nathan Peterman, have decided to make their home in New Orleans. Thank God for that. Times-Picayune columnist Rod Walker is here to talk about it, along with one of the biggest regular season games of the year tonight for the Pelicans. And it's all coming up next on the Dattitude Podcast.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to all my friends elsewhere, everywhere, out there, whose shirts were wet yesterday from sweat, and today it's from that monsoon outside. Have you watched TV at all today, or have you listened to the radio? I mean, we're glad you're here on the podcast, but there have been some weather alerts, tornado warnings. Yesterday was first 80-degree day since, like, I don't know, Thanksgiving or something like that. Yep, he's talking about the weather again. You know who it is then. It's Dattitude. It's episode number 215 for a Friday, March the 15th, 2024. The Ides of March. A2 Brute. And who am I kidding? What do I know about Shakespeare except the fact that he was British, I think, right? Yeah, I'm just kidding. All right. I'm your host, Jim Derry, and whether you are watching on our NOLA.com social media channels or listen to it on the podcast, as always, I thank you for being part of the show. Nathan Peterman. I joke about Nathan Peterman, but I'm going to bring on Rod Walker in just a few minutes, our Times-Picayune columnist. He wrote a great column, by the way, about Jameis Winston. There go my numbers. They're dipping. You mentioned the words Jameis and Winston together in the same sentence, and the ratings just crash. I'm just saying. He wrote a great column about Jameis Winston, who I thought was great for the city. I thought he was great for the team. And so he's gone. Nathan Peterman's here. What do we think? I will say this. I don't think the quarterback situation is in dire straits, is what I was reading on social media yesterday. I'm going to ask Rod what he thinks in just a minute. Before we bring him in, I have to get rid of a couple things here. One is really good. I want to let you know that we are looking for sponsors. And on that note, I want to give out a shout-out to some new friends that I met yesterday. Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and Van Barbo over at Evangeline, what am I, a Yankee? Evangeline Securities. We had a chance to meet with them a little over an hour at their office yesterday in Poydras Street, just a couple of football fields away from the Caesars Superdome. And we can't wait to talk about their company story here on Dattitude. So hello to Nick, hello to Ron and Van. Thank you for meeting with me yesterday. We'll also remind you that if you're watching live, you can join in the show by typing in a comment in the stream. We'll show it here. If you want to ask Rod a question or you just want to make a comment, we'll show it on the screen. And if you haven't subscribed to the Dattitude YouTube page, what are you waiting for? I mean, you can do it now. Just click the subscribe button. You know how to do it. Also, we want to thank those people listening on your whatever podcast host you use, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can get in touch with me via email at jderrytheadvocate.com or on X/Twitter at Jim Derry Jr. Okay, it's time to bring in Rod Walker, and we have a lot to talk about this afternoon. Rod, what's up, my friend? How are you?
What's up, man? Good.
It is, as usual, a wild time in free agency. Maybe not wild for the Saints because they haven't done a whole lot yet. I do think that Willie Gay, we talked about it earlier Wednesday on the show with Luke, and I think that that is going to be a key signing for this team. I do think that he will be a major impact. I like the Cedrick Wilson signing. It's fine. Nathan Peterman, whatever. But look, this is kind of what the MO is for this team, right? I mean, I know that last year they made the splash with Derek Carr, but this is kind of who they are. And they've got under the cap anywhere from 10 to 18 million, depending on where you look. But they're going to probably sign a couple guys, but you can't expect them to sign make a major splash.
Yeah, I mean, this has no surprise at all. This is a team that typically, I mean, you mentioned Derek Carr. Obviously, that was a big splash. But typically, I mean, they sort of wait until that first, second, or third wave of free agency, when, all the big guys, the big names are usually already off the board by the time the Saints start bringing in guys. But that's just kind of where this team is. I mean, even you go back to the year when they signed DeMario, I mean, that wasn't in that first wave. It's kind of in that second wave of players. So this is kind of what they do. And no surprises. Obviously, fans, you see all these other teams getting these players. You look at what the Falcons are doing. They're making all these moves with some noticeable names. And I think that gets fans frustrated that their team is not making those same type moves.
I agree wholeheartedly. William Lopez says that people are overreacting to Nathan Peterman. It's Nathan Peterman. He will be third string at best. With this signals that the Saints are ready to give Jake Haener a shot at the number 2 quarterback. That's kind of my point, is that Nathan Peterman is a whole lot of whatever. I mean, I don't know that he's not. I mean, I don't think we can know whether he'll be number 2 or number 3 at this point. I think there's actually a good chance that he is the number 2 quarterback. Again, we got a long way to go before we figure that out. Whether they're ready for Jake Haener to be number 2 or not, I think time will tell on that. Remember he missed Rod. He had to miss the first 6 games of the season for PED use or whatever it was, and so I don't know. Nathan Peterman's a vet, Rod.
Yeah, we're I guess we did our Saints Insider podcast 2 days ago,
right? And
I was on that podcast, and the one things I said was that I don't think the Saints can go into this season, and this was 2 days ago. I don't think you go into the season with Haener as your number 2 guy, because I just don't think they saw enough from him last year. I mean, that was that preseason game when he didn't really look great at all, and you mentioned the time that he's missed. So, and you look at this team, and with Derek Carr, the injuries he, battled through last year, and you don't know how good this offensive line is going to be. I mean, I think you have to go into the season with a better number 2 option than Jake Haener. So when I said that on the podcast, I was thinking, okay, they're going to go out and get one of these, more seasoned veteran guys. And then so yesterday I see Nathan Peterman, and I'm like, I don't know if that's the answer either. So I'm assuming they must really plan on keeping Derek Carr upright this season, because to me, that's a big drop. When you had to go to Jameis as your backup, I mean, I think you felt like, okay, you can win a game.
Exactly.
With Nathan Peterman, I don't think you feel like that. And with Jake Haener, I don't think you feel like that yet. I mean, we just haven't seen enough to be able to say that, you can win a game with Jake Haener as your starting quarterback.
Well, one thing that we know is Jake Haener will get plenty of time in preseason. There's no doubt about that. He will be given every opportunity to win the number 2 spot. Whether he wins it or not, we'll see. But look, I joke about Nathan Peterman, but the Saints just weren't going to spend a lot of money on a backup quarterback. They can't. And that was part of the reason, we can say what we want about Jameis Winston, and I do want to talk about him in a minute, because I want to talk about your column that I wrote. That you wrote. I loved the column, by the way. I agree with it 100%. You wrote a couple of days ago about Jameis in the city, and he had high hopes, and he thought his second chance was going to come here. It never really happened. I mean, he got a chance to start in 10 games, but went 6-4 in those 10 games, but he never got a real chance, I didn't think, to be the starting quarterback of this team, at least not after he got hurt. But that being said, where this team is right now, he signed for $8.7 million or whatever it is was Cleveland. The Saints just can't afford to spend, I don't think, $8.7 million on a backup, especially the way that Dennis Allen went last year and decided, look, I'd rather put Derek Carr in, who you can't tell if you got 3 fingers up or 4, and he'd rather do that than use Jameis Winston last year. So you can't spend any money on a backup quarterback with this team in the cap situation they're in.
Yeah, and even you going back to that, I mean, I thought Jameis, maybe he would have stayed, but I do think that I remember I wrote a column last year, and I can't remember which game it was. I was like, okay, you need to start Jameis this week. I mean, if Carr's injured like this, 100%. I mean, there's just no reason to be running an injured quarterback out there when you have a guy that you spent some money on that can be your quarterback. And I remember I talked to Jameis before I think it was the Bucs game, which is the game that I thought they would let Jameis start. He was kind of looking forward to the opportunity, and obviously, I mean, there was a history with Tampa Bay anyway, so it was a chance for him to maybe play against his old team, and he didn't start that week. And I think at that point, Jameis probably knew that he just wasn't going to ever get a shot. And Jameis still thinks he's one of the best 32 guys in the league at quarterback. And I mean, you can argue about that if you want, but I think he did.
I could think of at least 8 quarterbacks that started last year on a regular basis that he was absolutely better than. There's no question about that. And I certainly think even now he's one of the top 5. I said he was one of the top 5 backups in the league last year. I absolutely think he's still one of the top 5 backups in the league right now.
Yeah, I know last year I said if you were ranking the quarterbacks in the NFC South, I mean, Jameis is probably in the top 4, last year.
Probably so.
That's kind of, I mean, I think he was better than anybody Atlanta had on the field. And obviously Bryce Young hadn't developed yet. So, I mean, he was probably, you could say Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield and Jameis Winston were the top 3 quarterbacks in the division. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely understandable. Obviously he's going to Cleveland to be a backup to Deshaun probably, but I mean, it was probably time for him to, if he wants a shot, it didn't look like he was going to get it here. So I definitely, I get it.
I found it, what you said, you brought up kind of an ironic point about how the Saints struck out on Deshaun Watson and were it's just an ironic point that's who they were going after. They didn't get him and they had to kind of settle on Jameis Winston, and now he's going to be his backup. It's funny how just worlds turn, and we say we live in a small world. Well, the small world exists in the NFL as well.
Yeah, I mean, going into that year, I mean, the Saints, they kind of showed you how they felt about Jameis that year. I mean, they went in hard for Deshaun Watson with all the stuff that was going to come with that. They tried to get him, and it didn't work out. Then Jameis ends up, competing for that job and beats Taysom out for the position. But it's just crazy how that turned out. And now he's going up there. And I saw one of Jameis's quotes the other day to Josina Anderson, I believe it was, and he seemed like he's really embraced this role. Though I mean, he says he wants to go up there and and he can help Deshaun become a better quarterback. He's willing to do that, and that takes a lot for a guy who's a number 1 draft pick to be able to say. I mean, it has to be pretty humbling to not be a starter and know you're going to be a backup and to just say the things that Jameis says.
Rod, I'm going to say this. If you can make a living for 5 or 6 more years being a backup quarterback at about $8 to $9 million a year, I don't know that there's a better job in the planet, because you stand on the sideline with a clipboard in your hand, and during the week you help your starting quarterback in practice. You want to make $40 million or whatever it is over 5 years and then ride out into the sunset. And look, Jameis is one of the people who don't know this. Jameis is one of the biggest family men that was on the Saints last year. He's all about his family. Whenever you see Jameis Winston anywhere on the street, anytime, it's with his family. Yeah. I mean, I've seen him like 4 or 5 times. It's always with his family. So if you're going to
I posted a video of him at a church. Somebody sent it to me. He was at a church in New Orleans. I can't remember the name of the church, so sorry, Pastor, I can't plug your church here, but he's giving some words to the congregation, and he's holding his kid who's asleep. I don't know how old his kid is, but he's I don't know. He looks, yeah. But I mean, James is like holding him up.
Yeah,
he's holding the kid during the thing. I mean, that's who James is. Man.
I saw him at the LSU Florida State game when they played in the Dome, so a year and a half ago, and the baby was an infant then. So I'm guessing the baby's somewhere around 2 years old now. So
no, I think this baby. I think
this is a different baby. This is another baby.
This is this kid was not 2 years old.
Okay, so it's this.
He looked almost too big to be asleep. Like James probably could have said, "Hey man, you got to wake up."
Bring him on up. Bring him on up.
Just brought him on up, man. That's what he is.
Look, I'm a Jameis fan. I don't know that I was before. First of all, I don't really like Florida State, so that's probably was part of my thing with Jameis before. And then he played at Tampa Bay, he's a division rival. But when you got to learn a little bit about Jameis Winston, and people didn't want to learn. There's a lot of fans. Like you said, there were either they really loved Jameis Winston or they hated Jameis Winston. There was really no in between.
You want to see him do really well, or you want to see him fail.
Oh, you want to see him. See, I told you so. You had your little told you so. Like when he threw a touchdown pass, the people who loved him. See, I told you so. When he threw an interception, same the other side. See, I told you so. I mean, it's kind of like everything else.
That was his 4 years here, man. That was how it was, and it's kind of crazy when you look back at it. And he spent so much time here, and you realize that he only started 10 games, which is.
It is crazy. Threw for 2,600 yards. Jared says he hated to see him go. Depending on Watson's shoulder recovery, he may get a few starts. And look, anybody may get a few starts unless you play in New Orleans. I mean, you're probably not. I mean, Derek Carr probably would go out. If he'd have his right arm amputated, he'd probably start the next week. I'm just guessing.
Right. Throwing all left-handed passes. That's right.
Exactly. Well, we'll see what happens. All right. Look, I want to talk about a couple other things here this afternoon. And for those of you who don't know and didn't see, there'll be a second. The Saints for some reason, don't like a lot of LSU guys, although Tyrann Mathieu fits in that mold. We joke about LSU players that don't end up on this roster, but now the Saints have 2 players from St. Augustine High School. And you and I both covered Stanley Morgan. I think it was our first year. It was my first year back in prep. And it was your first year here, the Advocate, back in 2013. Stanley Morgan, I think, was a senior receiver at St. Augustine. And we played with Leonard Fournette, and what a great team that was. But now Stanley Morgan, who after 5 years with the Bengals is here in New Orleans, I don't think he's going to make that big of an impact, but I love the fact that they bring him in because he can be like a 5th receiver, and he's big on special teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good pickup. He was a really good high school player. Obviously, that was almost over 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about. I guess they got 3 guys if you count Trey Turner, also from St. Augustine.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But he wasn't he hurt?
He got hurt in training camp, and the first week he was here. But so I guess technically he's still on the roster. But
no, but I think he was hurt for St. Aug that year too.
Oh, he may have been. Yeah. No, I think Trey was already.
He was already gone? Yeah, he was already gone. You're right. He was the class of 2013, which means his last year of football was 2012.
So I just missed him. Yeah, he left right when I got here. But yeah, I mean, Stanley's a guy that's, he's from here and went to Nebraska. Probably a little overlooked in high school. I don't know. I can't remember what kind of offers he had, but I know he ended up at Nebraska. And he's been a
few big ones.
Yeah. You mentioned special teams. I mean, that's kind of. You can always use some help in that area. So, I mean, he's not going to come in here and replace Michael Thomas or anything like that. But I think he's the guy that can probably help his team.
All right. But Cedrick Wilson is kind of the guy, and you see him on the screen. His arm is kind of hanging over there. I like how that's kind of cool how that works. Cedrick Wilson, a receiver who I think is going to come in here and immediately be the number 3. I don't think, Rod, he kind of got lost in the shuffle at Miami with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And I think that, with a chance to do kind of what he did in Dallas. He had 61 targets his last year in Dallas, and I think he has a real chance to come in here and be a big part of this team. I'm not saying he's going to be, a guy who catches 50, 60 passes, but I think he kind of fits in the role that Michael Thomas had when he was healthy the last couple of years. And I do think he can be a guy who can step up, and he's going to be a guy who's going to play in the slot and is going to catch passes across the middle and do what you need him to do. I think this is a great sign. I joked about the signings, but I think this is a great signing for the Saints.
Yeah, man, when you look at if I was going to rank them, I'd probably put the Willie Gay signing first, but I'd put this one second. I think he's a guy that can definitely help in this receiver room. You kind of talked about Michael Thomas. He's going to be hard to replace, but Saints probably have to do it by committee, so they'll need guys like Cedrick Wilson to step up. A lot of people talk about A.T. Perry kind of filling some of that role too. And obviously you got some tight ends like Juwan Johnson who can do that. And so they're going to kind of have to piece it together, I think, to replace Mike. But yeah, this is a guy that, I'd expect him to
be a target.
He'll be a target. Yeah, he'll get his targets, I would think.
Does this mean, do you think, and we've kind of been talking about during the week, the possible reuniting of Derek Carr and Hunter Renfrow, do you think that maybe that this is kind of the end of that room? I don't know that the Saints would want to bring in another receiver along those lines. They might bring in another receiver free agency wise, but I think it would be someone below that level.
Yeah, early in the week I thought Hunter Renfrow was, I thought it was like a really, really good chance of it. I just feel like, obviously with his connections to the Raiders and the Saints have kind of proven that they love that pipeline. When you look at obviously Derek Carr, Foster Moreau, Jonathan Abram, all those guys play with the Raiders, and you just felt like Hunter Renfrow and his connection with Carr would be just a natural fit for this team. But they've brought in 2 receivers in the past 24 hours, so I think that may change a little bit. I don't know if you bring in another guy, but who knows? They can get it to work out. I wouldn't be surprised.
Mike Guillory says he loves the front moves the front office are doing so far. Great for the fans. Hey, that's the optimistic way to look at it. And I'm being completely serious. I'm not being funny when I say that. Look, when you have the cap situation that the Saints had just a month ago, the fact that they've been able to get Willie Gay in and getting now Cedrick Wilson in is kind of a big deal, but it's not the splash. The only good news I will say, when you look at the fact that they haven't been able to sign big names, other than Kirk Cousins in Atlanta, I mean, really, Tampa Bay's biggest signings were their own guys. I mean, Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield, in the contract they gave Baker Mayfield, I think is crazy, by the way. I think he's going to turn back into Baker Mayfield, but that's a whole nother story. And then Carolina hasn't really done a whole lot, and they lost Brian Burns. So, I mean, if you look at the division, you look at the NFC South, again, other than Kirk Cousins, which is going to be a big deal, but I don't think it's going to be as big as everybody's making it out to be. This division is still mediocre at best.
Yeah, I do think Atlanta, I mean, they brought in, they got Darnell Mooney, who was with Tulane as a receiver.
Yep.
And they brought in another receiver, and I can't even remember who it was, but
I don't either.
It was somebody who was, it was a pretty good pickup. I think when you look at how bad Atlanta's quarterback play was last year, I do think Kirk Cousins, especially when you look at how well he played before the injury last year, I think he's a significant upgrade at that quarterback position. And I just think they've probably made some moves that probably, because I think Vegas kind of moved the Falcons to the top as the favorites, and I think that's fair. But I also think the Saints, you look at their free agency moves. Yeah, they haven't made any big splashes, but I think their big splash, or what they're hoping is that big splash, is the hire they made when they hired Clint Kubiak. I mean,
yeah,
if he can get this offense moving, I mean, it's really not about the players. I think the Saints offense has plenty of weapons, so I think it's more about if the coordinator can get them to score some points, especially when they get in the red zone.
You've already seen kind of the Clint Kubiak effect, I think. The fact that the Saints now have 2 fullbacks on their roster, signing another one earlier this week. So, look, this is going to be a run-first, I think more of a run-first kind of team, and they're going to run to set up the pass. That's going to be kind of old school, which is what got San Francisco to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. It starts up front with the offensive line. I'm not going to spend any more time in the show. I've spent the last 2 weeks talking about what I think they need to do on offensive line. We'll talk about that more as we get closer to the draft, and I know you guys on Saints Insider as well. And I think there's zero doubt now with the way that the Saints have handled free agency that they're going to go offensive line in this draft, and I think they're going to do it early, along with defensive line. But, that being said, look, this team still has a chance. I think it's going to be a different kind of offense, and I think that's a good thing because I think that, they'll kind of break away and be their own team now. Dennis Allen has a chance to be his own coach. I'm giving him a lot of grief. I'm not backing off from that grief that I'm giving him. I know you guys were being super nice to him the other day. This kind of diminishes the naysayers, and I don't believe that at all. I think there's still problems in the locker room. Just because DeMario Davis resigned, I don't – and I know you kind of didn't say a whole lot on this, but Zach was talking about it, and I just don't – I think there's still problems there. But the fact that they can start the whole new offense, kind of start from scratch, and this can now be Dennis Allen's team, for better or for worse, he has a chance now, and he's got a big chance. Got to do it this year. I think they have a chance to take a step forward and be their own team now and out of Sean Payton's shadow.
Yeah. And even when we talk about guys like DeMario and Tyron re-signing, and I think I hinted toward this. I mean, I don't know how it came out, but I think the fact that those are older guys that they're at a point in their career, they're not trying to move 100%. Off somewhere else. I mean, yeah, and both of them. I mean, DeMario's, he grew up 3 hours from here. Tyron grew up 2 blocks from the Saints facility. So those guys aren't trying to start their career over anywhere. So I don't think you should put a lot into that. Like, oh, Dennis Allen is not that. That Dennis Allen has the locker room.
He won him back again.
Yeah. I mean, it's just those guys wanted to come back. So
there's no doubt about that. And look, Zach's right about saying they could have made more money going elsewhere, probably. But like you say, I mean, when you're 32, 33, 34, in DeMario's case, I think he's 35, right? In that case, when you get to this point of your career and you have a chance to finish, look, why would DeMario Davis leave? Everybody loves DeMario Davis here. I mean, right. And obviously Tyrann Mathieu is at home. I mean, why would he want to leave? So, I mean, Look, I don't know. Troy saying as long as Derek Carr is quarterback, Saints won't do anything. I mean, look, if you want to think that way, then don't watch him. I mean, I've been down on Derek Carr as much as anyone last year. I mean, he had his moments, and more because I thought it was and we talked about it. There were games where he shouldn't have played, I thought. He only really had 3 bad games, Rod. And if you go back and look, the 3 bad games he had, I mean, you could debate whether the Tennessee game, his first game, he wasn't very good either. But I think the 3 bad games that he had were all games where right after he got hurt and was still hurt, and Jameis probably should have played. But other than that, I don't think you can blame where the Saints were on Derek Carr.
Yeah, I don't think he gets all the blame. And I mean, you look at, we talked about this all last season, but how bad that schedule was. I think that's probably where a lot of the skepticism comes from, because not only did they lose, what was it, 8 games?
They lost a chance.
Yeah. I know. They'll never get a schedule that easy. Well, we thought it was easier than it. I mean, Houston Texans ended up being a little better than we thought. But outside of that,
the Colts
they lost.
Too, but who they beat.
Right. But, I mean, the schedule was pretty friendly, and toward the end, they beat some teams that they beat the Bucks late, Falcons late. Those teams weren't there. Beat the Giants, beat somebody else like
Carolina.
Yeah, but when they played the Rams, who were pretty explosive, man, they got kind of exposed. And so, yeah, I mean, this schedule's a lot tougher this year. So I
think Kubiak, Rod, is going to be really good for Derek Carr, because I think some things are going to open up and change. And I don't think it's just going to be – I think he's going to let Derek Carr be Derek Carr a little bit more than Pete Carmichael did.
Yeah, and that's why I'm not – regardless of how you feel about how Carr played last year, I just think this year with a new coordinator, I think you just got to kind of give it a chance, see how it plays out. So I'm not going to be one of the ones saying, hey, Derek Carr's going to be much better this year. I'm not going to be one to say it's going to be as bad as things looked at times last year. But I do think you have to get his offense a chance to see, how it goes under the new coordinator. If it doesn't work, I mean, I think this is it for Dennis Allen.
I don't see how he can. Yeah,
they've allowed him to bring his quarterback in. They've allowed him to basically reshuffle the entire defensive coaching staff, and now he's picked his coordinator for offense. So, I mean,
I agree.
The next step is you. Yeah, it's on you now.
Look, there's a difference between criticizing what you've seen and look. I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to have a Dennis Allen bashing session. I'll wait and see what I see. And I've said what I've said. I still stand behind that. I think he's got problems in the locker room. But that being said, when you go forward, and if the team has decided, okay, we're going to give this, we've decided they're going to give the team a chance. Well, if you're a fan, why would you say, okay, well, I'm going to give them a chance too? You can't go into a season saying they're going to be terrible. I mean, if you go into that with that attitude, why would you even watch it, is my point. So you got to have an open mind to things. And look, just because I don't think Dennis Allen's the right coach for this team, I still don't. I hope I'm proven wrong. I say that. I really do, because it's much better for all of us. And you know this as well as I do. It's a lot more fun to write a column on Sunday at 4:00 in the afternoon when they win than it is to write a column on Sunday at 4:00 in the afternoon when they lose.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And especially when you're losing and the games aren't even, when the team is bad and boring, that's like the worst combination. And that's what we got a lot of last. That's what we got a lot of last year. So you want to see that. You want to see that change. And I mean, again, I'm willing to wait and see how his offense changes, because I do think this team has some really good pieces. So we'll see how it goes.
Agree. And look, it could be a repeat. I'm not saying it. Look, we'll make predictions. We got a few months before we make predictions. I think Rod and I are both fairly realist here. I guarantee you this, and I said this going into last year, so I'll be wrong again. But I don't think the local media here was all over the Saints again last year because of the easy schedule. You got to bet the over. I'm projecting the over is going to either be 7.5 or 8.5. I think it kind of depends on maybe the draft a little bit. I think it's probably going to be 8.5. And I know it might be the other way. So I might wait to see what the local media does. Whatever they do, I'm going to do the opposite. Yeah, because they've been wrong for 2 years in a row.
Well, I've been probably a little bit more over than everybody else. I know 2 years ago, I think I had them going 13-4, maybe 12.
Yeah.
I was like, really, really. And they fooled me again last year. I think I was probably around 11. But
so you're going to go the other way this year?
I believed in Derek Carr, so this year I probably will go the under this year, and this will be the year that they, win 12 games. So.
I think everybody will go under this year, and exactly, which would be fun though. All the naysayers out there, and all the naysayers have been a part of this show. Look, I encourage you. If you think I'm wrong, and if you want to hate on people, go ahead, comment. Yeah, I'll show them. I'm not going to get on, I might get on you a little bit, but I still welcome you to comment. But the point is, I want you to come back next year. If you're wrong, and I'll be the first one to say I'm wrong, I want you to say you're wrong too. We're all going to say we're wrong if the Saints have a good year next year. All right, before we let you go, and before we get rid of football, because I want to talk about the Pelicans for at least 5 minutes, I do want to touch on, I want to ask you, has this been the craziest, and it's only been a week, has this been the craziest free agency that you've seen so far? And look, these are just the latest key moves. Aaron Donald retired. I mean, oh my goodness. Maybe the best defensive end ever is retiring. You look, Keenan Allen to the Bears for a 4th-round pick. Oh my goodness. I don't think, this is another reason why I think the Bears ought to hold on to Justin Fields, because I think they could be really good, and I don't know if they can do it with Caleb Williams.
No, I agree. It's been a lot of moves. I think, you obviously mentioned some of the big moves, but to me, just these running backs switching. Seeing Derek Henry going to Baltimore, yes, and Saquon Barkley staying in the division and going to the Eagles. It's been really something. I think the Houston Texans have done a really good job with some of their acquisitions down there. I know they got Danico Autry, and they picked up Danielle Hunter from the Vikings.
They got Danielle Hunter, and they also made a move for some draft picks to get a couple extra draft picks.
Yeah, and they got Lonnie Johnson from the Saints. That just shows you how quickly things can turn. Because This time a year ago, the Texans were like, it didn't look good. They had a new coach, about to draft a quarterback, hit the jackpot on that draft pick, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, let's go to free agents want to go to Houston now, and you can't blame them. That tells you that it can turn around quickly.
We need to do I need to do some research and go through all the second picks of the draft over the course of the last 30 years and see if I can find one that's better than C.J. Stroud. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. That dude looks like, and I was wrong about C.J. Stroud. That dude looks like legit. I'm just going to say that. So.
Yeah, I think Saints fans should be, and I don't know how Bryce Young is going to turn out, but Saints fans better be glad that the Panthers decided on Bryce Young.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And you look at some of the other ones.
Sure.
I can't wait to see what the Bears do. And look, everything is pointing, the moves that they're making, everything is pointing to them keeping that pick and drafting Caleb Williams. I'll say it again. I just don't get it. I think Justin Fields and Caleb Williams are like this. I think they're what and what. And to give up on a guy that you made the first pick just a few years ago, and what you could do with that pick, move down like 6 spots in the booty you could bring in, the treasure chest you could bring in with that number 1 pick to keep Justin Fields and make your offense even better than I think the moves you've already made. And to have a guy like Keenan Allen now coming in with this veteran wide receiver who's, to me, still one of the top 15 or 20 receivers in the league. Right. I don't know, man. I don't agree with what they're doing, but I don't have to.
I don't either. I agree with you.
Caleb Von Chasson, the former LSU standout, signing with Carolina on a 1-year deal. Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. That's a big move. And then Arik Armstead. You see all these things have happened. There are going to be plenty more as we go forward. And because if you look at the top free agents remaining, and I went to The Athletic this morning and took a look at the list of their top 10 guys that are still on the board, Andres Pete has now climbed in there. I find interesting. Free agent. Do you think Andres Pete resigns and stays here in New Orleans?
Man, that's a tough question. You don't know a whole lot about Pete because he doesn't really say a whole lot.
Right.
You don't really see him out in the community a lot. He's just kind of he's kind of a family guy that just kind of sticks, he kind of stays at home, kind of quiet. So
you don't see him talk on TV or anything either.
Yeah. People rarely. I would talk to him all the time. He has a brother that's one of the top basketball recruits in the country.
Okay.
Like Michigan, Duke.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's incredible. You should go to YouTube and I can't remember his first name right now, but if you go to YouTube,
high school in Michigan.
No, he's in Arizona because they're from Arizona.
Okay.
But I know Michigan has recruited him. Duke's. He's got off. He can go anywhere in the country he wants to go. But if you ever get a chance, just go to YouTube and I'm sorry I can't remember his first name right now, but it's kind of easy. his last
You
name.
talk about college basketball real quick. Breaking news, by the way, Juwan Howard is out at Michigan. So if Michigan was recruiting, they're probably not going to get him. I'm just saying.
Right. But anyway, my point was that so you go back to Andres Pete. I mean, he's a guy that had a really good season. You know, I mean, they moved him to tackle. He hadn't played tackle since college, and he went out. You know, he made that shift from guard to tackle, and all of a sudden, the Saints had given up. I think it was 17 sacks through the first 6, whatever it was, and all of a sudden the line issues kind of got better. So that's a credit to him. I mean, he's a guy that, you know, he's made several Pro Bowls. Scrutinized by the fans all the time. I mean, fans.
He's like Jameis Winston. In fact, he might get screwed. Yeah, I was gonna say he might get screwed. I don't know that you can find. At least Winston is like maybe 40% love, 60% hate. With Pete, it's more like 20% like, 10% I don't care, and 70% hate. So it's probably worse for Andres Pete.
Because even last year when he played well, like you didn't see a lot of people like saying, "Hey, he played well." They just didn't talk about it. Like they want to ignore it. But I mean, he played well. He was definitely a big reason that the offensive line got better.
Well, I can tell you if they wouldn't have had him step in for Trevor Penning last year,
it's been a
disaster. It would have been worse than it was. Who else on this list do you see? And I see there's a few Ravens on this list as you look. But is there anybody on this list that I don't know? Chase Young, obviously, the rumors that he could potentially be a Saint. It looks like it's down to either the Saints, the Panthers, or the Titans, one of those three teams. Honestly, he probably fits in better with the Panthers because they really need him a lot more. Look, don't get me wrong, he would be great here. But I think the Panthers probably need him more. I don't know if that means he goes there, but I think Chase Young obviously is of the 10 that are on this list. And not count, let's say 9 because we don't want to count Pete. But of the 9 other guys on this list, Chase Young probably has the best chance of coming here.
Yeah, I think I don't know what his connection was with Clint Kubiak, since they were both, obviously on different sides of the ball, but he was with the 49ers. So maybe some connection there. And, you know, the Saints definitely could use some help, even though you don't know how Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner, if they're going to have a pan out. But to me on this list, and I'm only saying Tyron Smith is if Pete.
Yeah, wow, that's a dream. That's a dream.
Right. That's kind of
being
really optimistic. As far as just needs, if the Saints could, I don't know how they could even pull that off, but if they could, he would be the guy that could definitely fit. I don't know if you look at OBJ on this list. We kind of talked about receivers, and I don't know if they, want to bring him back to New Orleans.
Yeah, I don't think either one of those receivers have a chance to come here in New Orleans. But I do think that, look, if you can find a way to bring Smith to New Orleans, great. He's a starting left tackle and would immediately fill that problem that you have. But, I don't know if you have the money and can afford it, because then that would be the end of it. You wouldn't be getting much else after that. Right. All right, let's talk about the Pelicans. To me, I think tonight, when you look at impactful regular season games, tonight is a big litmus test because you're playing the Clippers, a team that you're supposed to be what with. You've played them already 3 times this year. You played them good once, not so good the other 2. I think that I don't want to say need to win. Obviously, there's no such thing as a must-win in basketball, especially with where you are. You look at the Pelicans, where they are. They're going to finish probably anywhere from 4th to 7th or 8th. But I think for psyche-wise, as well as they've played, Rod, I think that this is important for them to say, you know what, we do belong with the best in this conference.
Yeah, this is a big game for them. I thought it was going to be even bigger than this. You look early in the week, the Pelicans were only 2 games behind the Clippers in the standings.
Yep.
And kind of had a chance to get really close and maybe even, jump them before the season started. And obviously 4 and 5, you're only switching who has home court advantage in the first round. So it's really not that big of a deal. And the Pelicans obviously have second best road record in the NBA. So, they play well on the road. So that's really not that big of a deal. But I think psychologically it will be good to be able to get a win over the Pelicans. And they really need to couple that with the win tomorrow against Portland as well. They played really bad against the Cavs the other night. Probably their worst game in the past 16 or 17 games. The Pelicans
easily.
They went out and just laid an egg. So
yeah, they
need to bounce back from that. And they need to beat the Clippers tonight. And you need to come back 24 hours and take care of business against a Portland team that's not very good. So, because then you hit the road for a stretch that's I think it's Brooklyn.
There it is, Brooklyn, Orlando,
Miami,
and Detroit.
You need to go 2-2 in that road stretch. I mean, you need to beat Brooklyn for sure. You need to beat Detroit for sure. If you can steal in Orlando or Miami win, I mean, you're really setting yourself up really well. But then they come home for a really, really tough. It's like 4 or 5 games in a row, but it's like a really tough stretch.
Well, you can see there it starts with Oklahoma City and Milwaukee. So those first 2 games right there, that's crazy.
Then you got Boston and Phoenix right after that.
Yeah,
I mean, So that stretch gets really tough back home. So again, they need to win these next 2 at home. If you can split the next 2 on the road, you're 4-2. And I think I just think they need to just kind of take care of business where you can take care of it. You're not going to win every game, but there's a chance that you really want to stay out of that. To me, if they stay in the top 6 and stay out of the play-in tournament, they've done well. And the 6th spot actually may not be the 6th spot. If you play in Minnesota, that actually may be better than playing the Clippers in the first round, especially without Cat. I mean, Cat's out. So
yeah, and look, if you can avoid Denver or Oklahoma City until the conference finals,
right?
Great.
To me, I think Denver's the team you really want to avoid.
I agree.
Because to me, I think regardless of how the standings look now, Denver's the team in the playoffs. I mean, the Joker is just incredible. He's a guy you want to stay away from him as long as you can.
He's going to turn it on again. So is Jamal Williams, and I just think once you get there, those dudes are just ridiculous. You and I like to talk about values, and we'll text. We have text with Zach about some weird bets or parlays that we've seen or whatever, or things that we do. And I brought this up with a few other guests the past couple of weeks. And these numbers haven't changed. And it really is mind-boggling to me that they haven't moved at all. And I don't often say that I think that I'll tell you what I think or what I like or what's a good value play. I don't often say you should go bet this, okay? But I'm saying you should go bet this. There is no better value in the NBA odds right now to me than both the conference championship odds of 28-1 and the NBA championship odds of 75-1 for these pals. Do I think they're going to win the conference championship? Not really. Do I think they're going to win the NBA championship? I don't think so. But I think if you play this season out 28 times or 75 times, they're going to win the conference championship 3 times out of 75. And I think they're going to win the NBA championship at least once out of 75. I think both of those numbers are great values, and they're worth putting a few bucks on just to have fun with.
I don't disagree with you at all. In fact, I don't know if I've said this publicly, but I really think the Pelicans have a really legitimate shot. And it's going to depend on how the brackets fall, but I really think they can get to the Western Conference Finals because I just think
I agree.
Beating them 4 times in a series, as well as they play on the road, as deep as they are, as good as they are on both ends of the court, I just think beating them 4 times is going to be really tough. I think it all just comes down to when they match up with Denver, because I do think Denver's going to be a problem for them. But if they can somehow get it where they would meet Denver in the conference finals, I think they can get there. And if they meet them in the second round,
yeah, and if they do that, their odds then will be somewhere along the lines of 3-1 instead of 28-1. So go buy them before the playoffs now start.
And the way the playoffs are, I mean, you never know how those first 2 rounds are going to go, and guys, the longer those series last, the more crazy things happen. So I just think if they can somehow avoid Denver to the conference finals, I think they got a legitimate shot.
I agree with you. We talked about the schedule coming up. It doesn't get easier. They have already just finished their easiest stretch of schedule. They did well, the 39 and 26, but now they've got to do it against some of the big boys, and we're going to find out a lot about this team going forward. Rod Walker, I thank you for coming on. I know you get a lot going on. Saints Insider Podcast, Rod is a part of that. Check it out with all the Saints guys, and we'll be watching you on there and hopefully have you on again before the Pels start the playoffs.
All right, no problem, man. Thanks a lot.
Rod Walker, we thank him. And, it's Rod and I came back to, I was covering I left sports for about 5 years, and I came back to sports in 2013, right as Rod was coming in. So we kind of we've been around the same channels a lot. We spent a lot of time. We were in Lake Charles together, a bunch, prep basketball, prep baseball, prep softball. Spent a lot of time in the western edge of the state together, covering all kinds of high school things. And You know, Rod is now one of the top columnists, not only here at the Times-Picayune, but he is one of the top columnists in the state of Louisiana for sure. We thank him for coming on, and all the Saints guys. He had Luke on earlier in the week. In case you missed that show, go back and watch it. It was a lot of fun and very informative. Okay, very informative. All right, as we do every show here, we're going to finish up with the extra point. And I went looking through some things today, and then I found one. I'm like, this is cool. It's not New Orleans related, but I think it's important and cool because, you know, for those of you who have been listening to me for an extended amount of time, when I'm not talking about the Saints or LSU or Tulane or the Pelicans or betting or whatever, I'm probably talking about the weather, golf, or baseball. I love baseball. I'm a baseball guy. And 155 years ago today, in our extra point, the Cincinnati Red Stockings. That's right. They were the Red Stockings when they first started. They were formed, and you see that picture there. You know, one thing I find interesting about this picture, I don't know how they doctored it up and made it look like this, and you can only see it small on your screen. But what do you notice about this picture of the Cincinnati Red Stockings from 155 years ago? There's only 9 guys in the picture. They didn't have any bullpens or anything. And who did they play? Who did they play back in 1869, March 15th, 1869? Were they playing just like teams around Cincinnati? Were they driving to Cleveland or Dayton or Toledo or, I don't know, whatever else is around Cincinnati? I know they're right on the border of Kentucky where they're playing teams from Kentucky. Who were they playing? That's what I want to know. It was the beginning of professional baseball. And to me, that is one of the key moments in sports history because Major League Baseball is the oldest of all the major sports franchises. And everything kind of started with baseball, whether you want to agree with it or believe it or not. The National League would form 7 years later in 1876, and the American League wouldn't come to fruition until a quarter century later in 1901, although the two leagues would remain separate entities until 2000. Major League Baseball officially came together in 1903 when the National League and American League agreed to face off the end of their respective series in the World Series, with the first one being won by the Boston Americans, not the Red Sox, not the Red Stockings, the Boston Americans. They beat the Pittsburgh Pirates 5-3 in a best-of-9 game series. They did play best-of-9 game series well into the teens and maybe even to the early 20s. If you remember the whole Black Sox scandal against the Cincinnati Red Stockings, they were the Reds by then. That was actually a best-of-9 series. So I know obviously that was 1919, so it went past there. So that is our extra point today. Again, big baseball guy, and as we get closer to fantasy baseball time, why not? 155 years ago today. What were you doing back on March 15th, 1869? I was just a young pup back then. I was thinking about what I'd be doing for the Dattitude Podcast. They weren't listening to a lot of podcasts back in 1869. Speaking of not listening to podcasts, that's going to end the show. That's going to wrap up this show for a Friday afternoon. I want to thank today's guest, Rod Walker, and I hope that you can join us next on Monday when we'll be welcoming in sports betting director Thomas Casale. And I'm not just saying this, folks. This is the truth. He seriously might be the best college basketball handicapper in America. Oh, whatever, Derry. I'm dead serious. I'm telling you to go find him on Twitter and look at the stuff he's been telling you. Now, he had a rough, I don't want to say rough. He had an average day yesterday and maybe a couple days this week. But if you go over the past 6 weeks, Thomas Casale has been better than anyone else I can find. It's documented. It's there. Check it out. He's going to be here Monday. We're going to talk about the brackets, and we'll probably add in a little bit of football. But I'm telling you, if you want some inside scoop for your brackets, come back to Dattitude on Monday. He's going to give it to you. The show will air live at 11 a.m., and it'll be available on demand on all of our social media channels on NOLA.com/sports and wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, yeah, and we remind you politely to subscribe to the Dattitude Podcast, our YouTube page, if you haven't done so already. We really, 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 really want you to subscribe to the Dattitude YouTube page. I know I haven't been, Gabe's been off for a few days, and I haven't done a great job with the shorts. I've had some other things going on, but we're going to get to that fix the shorts. And I'm going to have a daily short, my own, not just highlights of the show. I have my own daily shorts starting probably not next week, probably the week after next. So that will be a lot of fun. We thank you for joining us again. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.